everyone. My name is Thara Menon. I'm from the Canadian Multicultural Network, and today we have with us Ms. Brandy Leary, Artistic Director of Anandam Dance Theatre, co-director of Collectivespace, and choreographer specializing in Chhau and Kalarippayattu, which she has accomplished after spending years of training in India. Brandy is a triple Shastri Indo-Canadian Fellow, a Chalmers Professional Development Awardee, and has been twice shortlisted for the KM HunterAward in Dance 2009 and 2011, is a 2013 Multi-Disciplinary Dance Artist Nominee for the Soulpepper Dance Awards, and has had her work supported by numerous Canadian foundations such as the Canada Council for the Arts, Hal Jackman Foundation, Creative Venture Collective, Bata Shoe Museum, Ontario Arts Council, Toronto Arts Foundation, and the Toronto Arts Council. Hi, Brandy. Welcome.
Hi, Thara. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's so nice. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you here with us. So, I'm going to start with a warm-up and slowly get into the questions.
Just like a dance studio.
Just like a dance studio. So, one of my first questions for you is that, well, COVID. I think that's going around and it's becoming a bit crazy. So we'll start off with COVID. It's truly taken a toll on everyone's lives, especially artists who rely on in-person interaction and forms of communication to fuel their careers. How have you been coping with the drastic changes the pandemic has caused? Do you continue teaching online? Or
all this? Yeah, I mean, it's funny. It feels like it's always the context and sort of this normal juggling that we've been dealing with for the past year. So for me, the first 6 or 7 months, I was grounded in India. I was there working and studying, and I was in Kerala at my Gurukul's house. And so for the first 6 months, especially because the lockdown was quite intense in India, I was just there and in a way that was actually really supportive is I had a big terrace. I was dancing every day. I was having class with my teacher. It was beautifully warm. I didn't have to do the first months of COVID in the desolate winter that Toronto can have.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I have not been so much teaching online because I also was concerned about shared resources and concerned about my communities here in Canada, here in Europe, and in India. And so when the people that take Kalarippayattu through Anandam were asking for online classes, I thought, I'm here with my teacher. His Kalari has been shut down. So why not have access to this incredible knowledge? So because Gurukul has been teaching online for the last year and a half, and it's been wonderful. We've just been and wonderful for me because I can only go to class, a couple times a year, six weeks or a month or whatever, and I'm practicing here. So it's been a little luxurious for me to have a class every single day from my teacher in my home, and we've had students from Canada, students from India, the Middle East, Europe, the USA. So that's been quite lovely. But my own Kalari teaching, I just made that space, obviously, from my teacher to also have a way of continuing to participate in knowledge sharing, in training, because India, the systems of support are a little bit different. So that felt it felt good. It felt responsible. It felt respectful.
That's awesome. That's great to hear. Wow.
Yeah. Also, to watch him teach online, like watch him figure it out, has made me just a better teacher. Like he's had some beginner students, and I'm just actually quite amazed at what they've picked up through it. So also just very humbling to watch an expert teacher, a master, someone who's really deeply within their form with a lot of generosity teach. So it's been good learning.
Yeah, it's truly one of a kind teaching experience for sure. So, you have specialized in multiple cultural art forms. Is there one in particular you favor a tad bit more than the others? And would you say that it's your ultimate specialty? Like, what aspects of it intrigues you the most?
I mean, of the main practices that I have been trained in dance was earlier in my career, I was working in Chhau. But I would say the most consistent, especially over the last 15 years, has been the practice of Kalarippayattu, which really is my favorite in a lot of ways, as it's I mean, I got interested in it from being in the works of a remount of Chandralekha's work and this contemporary choreographer. It was a posthumous remount, but seeing that Chhau and Kalarippayattu were these very important, and yoga as well, were these very important languages as India was looking at the contemporary, sort of in the later 20th century, without trying to look to Europe. So yoga, Chhau, Kalarippayattu were these languages. So for me, Kalarippayattu had this offering of still holding the South Asian body cosmology around space, around time, around how we modulate ourselves with others in space, but wasn't holding a repertoire. Or wasn't like I wasn't moving into that space of dance. So it becomes a training for the performer to be really clear about where they are in space, to understand a form that's built on an anatomical functionality, even though it reads as very beautiful. When we watch it, it reads as dance-like, but to understand a form constructed for function that manifests a physical aesthetic over when we're learning a form that we're bringing an aesthetic onto our body. It's a little bit of a different thing. So,
oh, I see.
Yeah.
Very deep, very deep. So, you're not only the founder and artistic director of Anandam Dance Theatre, but also the founder and co-director of Collective Space and co-artistic director of the Contemporary Circus Arts Festival of Toronto. How do you execute and balance all the activities of the following institutions? Because that's a lot on your plate for sure.
Yeah, it definitely is. So the Contemporary Circus Arts Festival, that closed in 2016, and it was a joint, I think it ran from 2013 to 2016, and it was a joint venture with Rebecca Leonard, who was a colleague of mine. And it was really looking at the time, how to create a space to bring in teachers from around the world, to infuse the Toronto community with different knowledge, different aesthetics, and also to have a place to show work. So that wound up in 2016, mostly because balancing a number of things can be really challenging. And I just was really focusing on a lot of touring at that time. But Collective Space is really one of the things I'm most proud of. It's Anandam's home in Toronto, but it's a collective between myself and two other women, Lara Ibata and Natalie Fullerton, originally just a response to understanding that we needed a space to practice every day for all of us. That was very important. And also to not look at a space as a revenue source, but as a community resource. So how to have a space that's accessible and affordable to artists without thinking that we're trying to make money on it. So what is it to run something towards sustainability that prioritizes artists' needs, as opposed to like, we need to make so much money off this space. And there's just so many multiple communities of practice. There's many South Asian dance artists that use the space. There's burlesque artists, there's social circus artists, there's puppetry companies, film companies. So it also kind of has this beautiful generosity in the space. It doesn't take on, sometimes we're like, oh, I know this is a dance space and there can be some tension, or a theater space. Like it holds a really beautiful openness. Yeah, and it's been a beautiful collaboration between the three of us, because it's absolutely run on this idea of horizontal governance. So it's all consensus based. It's all, it's just been it can be a little bit difficult to do anything collectively. And so the kind of labor and care and respect of working with these two incredible women, these two incredible artists, to make a space that's adaptable. It's become a really important alternative venue for performance and rehearsal in Toronto. Has been incredible. And we're in the process of losing spaces in Toronto, right? Like COVID is, especially for dance. So it feels even more vital.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. All right. So you had mentioned that the Shastri Fellowships have made a great impact on your career as a contemporary artist. Can you elaborate on how the fellowships have helped you accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel very sad for the generation below me because the Shastri Fellowships in Performing Arts don't run anymore. And it was this incredible, it would fund a full year of you being in India, making a proposal for whatever you were working on, music or dance in any form. And so it covered your plane ticket, it gave you a very base amount of money per month. And it allowed you the thing that anyone needs to get better at something, which is time, without being sort of overstressed with 40 hours of a work week. And particularly if you're working in a South Asian form, in a form based in India, because it's the Indo-Canadian Shastri, where there aren't many institutions that can offer any kind of full-time training or the context of having access to class every day, having access to musicians, having access to the kind of archives, like even to be able to go to the Sangeet Natak Academy or the Music Academy and go through the archives. Those things aren't really as available here. So for me, it was just, it allowed me 3 years of being in India where all my job was to study and practice. And that, it was incredible. I'm so thankful for that opportunity. It really shaped everything about my artistic practice.
That's so nice to hear. That's for sure.
If they're watching, I hope they bring back the Performing Arts Fellowships. It's really pivotal for artists.
Yeah, for sure. We'll cross our fingers. It benefits a lot of like our artists in our age, for sure.
Yeah.
So you've created numerous contemporary performances produced in Canada, USA, India, Europe, and South Africa. In which location would you say you have created the most memorable performance, and what did it entail?
Yeah, when you asked me some of these things to think about, I was like, oh, that's a really interesting question. And I sort of came up with, there's like a tie for first place in a way. So, and for different reasons. So I think the last large performance I worked on was in 2019, obviously pre-COVID, was a repertoire piece called Ephemeral Artifacts. This one was in Scarborough at the Scarborough Town Centre. Which was a massive installation in the center court there of like 3,000 hanging bells, and it ran for 12 hours on the night of Nuit Blanche, and it had 6 incredible dance artists who were from Scarborough, and we had almost 200,000 people go through the installation that night. So that kind of energy and immensity was just so moving in a public space. So that would be my favorite in Canada. And when I was thinking about touring, I had a performance in France in 2018. I believe it was the same year that France was in the World Cup for soccer. And we were performing, and we had performances a number of times in the afternoon. And it was so fascinating. Audiences in France, or my experience from touring there, is that it's a different kind of engagement with work. So the audiences wants to talk to you about your work, about philosophy. They want to argue with you, and just that value of having a discussion around work. So what was happening is we would perform, and the audience would like cram into the warehouse. And then all of us, including my cast, would run to the cafe and the bar down the street, and we would watch where the game was. And then we would all run back, and the audience would it was this new audience would join, but this audience came and watched the show 3 times in a day between like the World Cup of soccer, between having conversations about philosophy and sort of abstract contemporary art. So I was just like, wow, that was amazing. And then I think my last one would be performing glaciology, which is a piece we have in Cape Town in South Africa. It was just really moving and radical to do work in public space in a city and a country where public space is so politicized. And yeah.
Really interesting. Okay. And you've traveled between Canada and India for training in the last 15 years, and that must have been quite a journey for sure. Can you elaborate on your experiences to finding your passion and challenges you faced during that time?
Yeah. I mean, I'm traveling back and forth because the forms I'm studying aren't really easily available here. For regular study. And then also because I spent so much time, especially my early training, living in India, like I had friends, I had families, people I consider family, and also a network of collaborators. So I would also be working, and I was teaching at universities and making works with artists there. And to answer your question around this like passion, like I think I was very lucky as a child. I just knew I wanted to make dances. That was clear, and not with any kind of giant ambition of becoming like a world star top choreographer or dancer, but like a real curiosity about what is dancing and what is it when we watch dance and how do we think about dance. So it wasn't so much about finding a passion, but learning that your passion is really just an indicator of your curiosity. Because passion's amazing. It's an amazing part of being human, but it's this intense energy that's pointing to something else. Because any intense emotional state actually isn't sustainable if we can't figure out what's underneath it. It's just like, we love it, it's a little bit addictive, but you can't keep recreating always being passionate when you're on like hour 12 of rehearsal. Like you have to develop like a curiosity around discipline, a curiosity around success or failure or the material you're working with. So like I was learning about structure, I was learning about practice, I was meeting artists and working with artists that were increasing my curiosity and for being an artist. So that's what kept me traveling back and forth. And for me, I mean, the challenge obviously is that you're moving geographies, but because I was always working with Chhau and Kalarippayattu, I was teaching at a university, or I was making my own work, like I didn't have as many complications as someone who would be engaged in the culture or structure of a classical dance that seems to come with a bunch of other expectations around people, around foreigners or people who are NRIs or those things. So I didn't have any of that because basically no one really cared about these things in that way, or like no one thinks you're going to go and make $1 million doing Kalarippayattu or Chhau. Like, and especially at the time, like in the mid 2000s, no one really like had heard of Chhau, even though it's been around. Like people were like, oh, you know. Okay. So I've just been like blessed with incredible teachers. Like I cannot say that enough. Really, really lucky, respectful, intelligent, disciplined, knowledgeable teachers who have cared for me as their own family, who have disciplined me as their own family, who are brutally honest. So I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah, they are a blessing for sure.
Yeah.
I think that too. You always need, when you have teachers, you need people who are, or instructors who are going to be honest with you. Otherwise, if you sugarcoat a lot of teaching methods, you won't exactly know what you're doing, and you're going to be, it's not like the true dancer abilities or what in terms of Kalarippayattu, if it's Kalarippayattu or Chhau, those abilities won't show completely. You just need like that kick or that drive.
Yeah, and there's also this like, it's a slightly different pedagogy. I found like it became clear to me that I am expected to spend a lot of time outside of my class figuring out the information. Like it wasn't being spoon-fed in any way. Like I was like, oh, I don't think I'd been called as a student to understand that much responsibility. Like that knowledge was being given to me, and I'm not just here to repeat it or replicate it. I have to bring knowledge towards that.
Right.
So yeah, it was incredible. Still is incredible. Still is incredible.
That's good. It obviously is. So it is definitely a feat to incorporate Western approaches to traditional art forms, such as, please correct me if I'm pronouncing this wrong, Mayurpanj Chhau, Kalarippayattu, and Rope Malakam, while simultaneously dissolving the colonial perspective. How do you manage to blend the two worlds together into your art?
I mean, for me, it's, the process of dissolving a colonial perspective, it seems like a lifelong work. For me, the interest really in, I don't really make works that might say this is an East-West meeting, where I'm usually working with a kind of structure. The structure of my choreographic works, I'm drawing from my training, which are held within this South Asian framework of performance or an approach to space or an approach to time. And what I think is really interesting, or what the contribution towards a decolonization within a field becomes very interesting when you're making contemporary works, because there's kind of an Orientalist gaze, or this very convenient binary of like ancient and modern. And it's very easy to just say Indian dances are ancient. Look at the costume, look at this. It's like, let's freeze that. When there's actually a very long history and multiple lineages of contemporary dance and art and music within India. So I'm finding it very interesting to be making contemporary works that work off different aesthetic structures around how audiences and performers are with each other, how time operates. That don't work from like a Western cathartic approach to emotion. And so you can start to add other aesthetics to a field, which can destabilize dominant Eurocentric notions, right? So that becomes really interesting to me, because the modern or the contemporary still sort of is assumed to be Western.
Right.
So like to have that conversation becomes really interesting and quite nuanced. Right? And we're all just practicing that.
Right. So you have studied the movement forms of Kalari and Chhau, as well as ritual performances that surround them directly as part of the forms themselves, and also indirectly. Can you expand more on these ritual performances? What did they entail, and why do you think it was necessary to study this along with the art forms?
So the two main ones that have had an impact on me would be with Chhau. There's the Chaitra Parva festival that happens in spring, which is traditionally when the dances were performed. So normally the dances are performed for 3 days leading up to a final day of rituals. And there's bhaktis that are selected and are going through a ritual process for about 2 weeks leading up to these dances. So they're related, but they're not integrated, but they're addressing the energy of the time and the season in different ways. So the first time I was in Saraikela for that festival, I was quite young, really in my early 20s. And we've been through 3 nights of dancing, and the dancing goes all night. Usually the last item is Durga slaying the demon. The sun is coming up. And then what happens is everyone goes and you take your bath and you have some food. And then we went to an even smaller village where they did the final rituals. And so this is the first time, and it's quite hot, right? We're sort of in the border of Orissa, Bihar, and Bengal in April. It's very, very hot. And the final rituals, there's a procession through the village. It was the first time I saw to drums. First time I saw audience members going into trance. There's these rituals that happen at the temple, like walking over hot coals, like hanging from hooks in the skin. And so for me, it wasn't like I wanted to recreate that or imitate that or make that a performative thing. It was just really good information at like age 20 I just remember standing there watching all of this going like, the body is absolutely more than we know.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I'm not doing these kind of things in my performance, but that knowledge to know the capacity of the body is much more than just a dancing image. It's not a product that we're making. There's some greater forces going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second form that was really informative for me is Thayam, which happens in the Malabar region of Kerala, in northern Kerala. My Kerala is in Kaligat. Which it's a very old spirit cult possession ritual performance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's durational. So it was the first time I saw like artists going in and out of trance, performance, possession, an audience like really attending to this intense moment and then going to have some food and taking a break and watching this go on for hours and hours and hours really stretched my idea of like how we step in and out of structured sacred spaces into the pedestrian. And again, it's not to recreate those rituals, but that sort of knowledge that we can hold a lot more than a proscenium theater or a well-made play, right? Mm-hmm. So those were quite impactful for the way I think of creating performances, which are not trying to create a ritual, but like understand there's structures out of these rituals that can be applied in performance for specific outcomes.
Right. Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah. So are you looking forward to any individual or collaborative projects in the future? And when concerning the latter, who do you aspire to collaborate with and why?
Okay, well, there's a couple things coming up. We have, there's a long-term project that will probably go up the end of this year in a really large festival. So we've been working with, since 2019, Padmini Chetur, who's a seminal choreographer within India, within the contemporary. Mm-hmm. So we commissioned her to make a piece for 5 dancers here. And the piece is called Chalking. So we've been working on that, and it will go up as a 4-channel video installation that has live performance with it. Oh. And it's stunning. It's stunning. It's working with her is like having the opportunity to work like with like a master artist, but in your lifetime. And it's a beautiful multi-generational cast. Some artists have training in South Asian dance forms. Some are coming from modern Western dance forms. And just what she's crafting is every day I'm just like blown away. So that's, and it's also so slow and so hard. Like it's the work demands a kind of attention. So that will happen at the end of the year. And in June, we have a show, again, Ephemeral Artifacts is a repertoire work that we perform in different contexts. So it's going up as an installation at Theatre Pasmarai. And this collaboration is with a tap dancer named Travis Knights. So it's, because it's COVID, we can't have live performance, and we weren't so interested in a live stream. For this, I know everyone's like, it's a lot of screen time. And because we have a long history of art in public spaces, so we're making an installation on the external of the Pasmarai building. So now it's 2 blocks. It'll be a 4-channel video installation in the window, the top windows, and there's a lighting design and a sound design. And it's so stunning. I was just working on it before we talked. It's a beautiful testament to practice, to understanding our lineages of practice, no matter what that is, whether you're a contemporary dancer or a tap dancer or a Bharatanatyam dancer, we have a context. We are who we are because other people worked on the dance, we're working on the dance. So it also feels like a little bit of a love letter to this moment. Like just because stages are gone or theaters are closed, like we still have our bodies and we still have our practices.
Right. Yeah. I think all this technical production about all the 4 screens and everything, that's huge. It sounds so high tech.
It's a little out of like my responsibility. We have a production manager doing that, but for me as a choreographer, I just have to look at like the 4 screens as sort of like 4 bodies. And it's yeah, I'm humbled by it every day. It's a beautiful piece of work. And I think it's June 24th to 26th, and it's just loops in the building from 9 p.m. to 11. Okay. People can just walk by and come and see it. Like, it's free. It just keeps going. And yeah, just even to expand our gaze from a screen. Like, I have to make myself go outside every day and just like take in space with our screen. I can see it in all our faces. Like, so even...
That's so true.
Yeah. So so it also just feels like a really nice offering, and it still maintains the integrity of the work. It doesn't feel like a pivot or a compromise. It felt like an opportunity. Yeah.
Right. And I just have one last question. I guess you all like touched upon this with my previous question. What kind of projects can we expect to see, hopefully in the near future, from Anandam Dance Theatre?
Well, that one, Ephemeral Artifacts. And we also have programs where we've been supporting a number of artists through residencies. So hopefully throughout the fall and the winter, as we're allowed to hopefully have small gatherings, we'll be able to present, like Otri Nundi is one of the artists who's making an ensemble work in Bharatanatyam. Tanvir Alam, a Kathak dancer, is working on a project. Sujit Vadya from British Columbia is working on a project through the residency program. Niraja Ramani. So also this process of like supporting other artists. And we've also commissioned a work from Kuriyatam artist Kapila Venu, which will be digital because she can't travel, but she's working on a contemporary work within the traditional Kuriyatam form. So a lot of like also supporting other artists amidst our two big projects.
Wow, that's amazing. So many big things that are going to happen soon. Thank you so much for having this amazing chat with me. I got to learn so much about Kalarippayattu, all the future projects that we're going to do, and just your journey to everything.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation. What a beautiful conversation, Thara. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Take care, Brandy.
Take care.
Have a good week. Bye-bye.
Bye.